Ah, okay, hello. I believe we are live. Alright, I am Grayson Allen, and this is Sleep Tight with Grayson Allen. This is gonna be a slightly different broadcast from the ones I normally do. Um, we're going with a lot more, I guess even more chill of an atmosphere. We've got this lovely campfire keeping us warm. Got the lovely sounds of nature at night all around us. And I got many sweet, scary stories for y'all to enjoy. And I hope we'll be able to kind of talk about these, like, I feel like I found some fun ones. I hope that we'll kind of be able to like talk about them together as we go through them. I made it a point to find stories that are, supposedly true. Supposedly true events. Again, when you're searching online for this kind of stuff, you kind of have to take it with a grain of salt and trust that the person posting it, actually is describing things exactly how they happened. But I feel like I found some pretty credible stuff that'll be fun to read. I tried to not. I mostly just skimmed the stories because I wanted to be able to kind of enjoy it with you all as we read them together, and have a fresh experience for everyone around, you know. And let's see here. Oh yes. So as part of the program, the idea is going to be that I will not be interrupting the story as I read it. I will respond to, all chatters and such as normal after the end of every story, and hopefully we can kind of talk about them together. But I kind of want to keep the stories nice and, I don't know, smoothly read. I'm actually thinking, I guess this is a little behind the scenes stuff, but like, I kind of want to see if I can maybe edit this together into some kind of fancy, episode thing for YouTube, or maybe even like a podcast kind of a thing. Because this is something I've really wanted to try. And, yeah, this will be a fun experiment. I'm curious to see if other people would be interested in me doing more of this kind of content. Maybe make it into something we do like once a week. So I figure I'll try this, especially, because Halloween is coming, October, spooky month is coming. So I figure maybe every week for October we can do one of these episodes, see how people like them. Maybe we can make this a year-round tradition. So I think that's pretty much everything I needed to say. I'm just going to double check and make sure that audio levels sound good. I want to make sure I'm louder than the nature surrounding me, which appears to be the case. Let me double check a couple other. Looks good here. Looks good there. Perfect. Yes. Beautiful. Okay. Well, I guess without further ado, let's hop right into our first story for tonight. To preface, so these are all stories that I've pulled from the subreddit r/paranormal, where people go online to share supposedly true events that have happened to them. And I really like the subreddit. I feel like there's a lot of really good stories that are posted here. A lot of very earnest, sincere people. And so I thought these would be some really good spooky stories to share. And we can discuss afterwards, guess what we think. So this first one is nice little shorty, and it seemed a bit apropos to start with this one, given our setting for tonight's stream. The title, let's see, this was posted by user Carrie Grant. The title is Strange Event in the Woods. This is something that happened to me when I was about 15 years old and was staying at my friend's house. I still get spooked just thinking about it, and I thought I might share it here. I think it was a Saturday when we were watching old movies, playing video games or whatever, when he suggested that we'd go for a walk in the forest near his house. I was bored and thought, why not? He said there was some old abandoned house in the woods, which I'd never been to or heard about before. I thought that was pretty cool, and he told me he could show me around. We headed out, and I brought a flashlight because it was getting dark. We walked through a trail surrounded by some unusually tall trees. This trail was getting deeper and deeper into the woods, and was soon not much more than tall grass, stones, and trees. We had walked around for around 30 or 40 minutes when it started getting really dark. I think I asked him if he was sure we were going the right way when I suddenly noticed a small Dutch colonial-style house peeking out from behind the trees. It was white, and I think it had some kind of porch in front of it. It appeared deteriorated and abandoned from the outside. I turned around and noticed that my friends weren't there anymore. I turned around and noticed that my friend wasn't there anymore. I thought he was playing around with me, so I just casually kept walking towards the house and pretended I didn't care. I looked through one of the windows and didn't see anything, but I heard a distinctive sound. Some kind of a giggle from above me. The weird thing was that it definitely sounded like a middle-aged woman laughing, not like my friend. I was a bit frightened and called out my friend's name, and he didn't answer. I was scared and angry, so I yelled his name really loud. The next thing that happened is only what I can describe as all hell broke loose. I heard a woman crying and wailing loudly and letting out these deep, horrifying guttural screams. I didn't even know where it came from, but I was too terrified to do anything besides run, and I ran straight through the woods. Occasionally I tripped over rocks and trees, and I cut up a big scar on the back of my lower leg. I reached a road after running for what I think was maybe 15 minutes, and some cars stopped by. The guy was nice enough to drive me home and asked me if I needed help because I was bleeding all over. Here's the kicker, though. I checked my phone, and my friend had sent me 2 messages asking me why I left and where I was. I was happy that he was alive and asked him if he was still in the woods. He didn't know what I was talking about and said he had been at home the whole time. I thought he was joking, but I saw that the first 2 messages were sent around the same time, and when we should have been in the woods already. It's been many years since then. We are not hanging around anymore, but he maintained for a long time that he didn't go into the woods with me, and that he was home the whole time when I suddenly just left without warning while he was in the bathroom. He said that he didn't know about any house in the woods either. My mind would go to more rational explanations if it wasn't for the fact that he messaged me, asking where I was while we were still out in the woods. Whew. That one has a nice twist at the end there. So, this one was Strange Event in the Woods. Appears to have been, I guess a few types of paranormal encounters kind of layered on top of each other. The idea that he went out into the woods with his friend to look for this supposedly haunted, abandoned house. And while at this, abandoned house, he heard all these strange noises, like a woman crying and laughing. And then when he got scared and ran away, he found out that his friend apparently had never gone to the woods with him. So who did he go there with? Why, it's like this idea of the haunted house, the scary forest, and some kind of a doppelganger. all rolled into a single story. Very spooky. Very... I don't know. It's... I like this one. It's kind of... Like doppelganger stories always kind of make you wonder, right? Like, I mean, and obviously, like, you know, in these kind of stories, the only witness to any of it is the actual storyteller. There's no other proof that he can offer beyond his own recollection. But it's really interesting. And it makes you wonder. So, there we go. That is Strange Event in the Woods. That was our first story for tonight. And moving on, we have, this is also from r/paranormal on Reddit. This was a story shared by user ParsyFail, I believe. The title of the story, or I guess the headliner of the story is, "As a correctional officer, I've had tons of experiences." Alright. I've worked as a correctional officer for a long time. I've worked at facilities in Texas and in Michigan. The oldest prison I've ever worked at just recently started to close in Michigan, and it got me thinking about all the paranormal experiences I've had there, and in the other prisons I've worked at. I'd like to share with all of you some of the more notable paranormal experiences that I've had while working in these prisons. First off, I'd like to say that I never really believed in ghosts before I started working as a correctional officer. I started off working in Texas at an intake facility. I worked night shifts 12 hours from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. The first experience that I ever had was working on a lower security housing unit. When finishing a round, I was chatting with my partner and I heard a loud banging sound. It was at like 3 a.m. at this point. No prisoners should be out of their bunks. I asked my partner if they knew what the banging was. They, being an older officer, told me bluntly that the unit we were working in was haunted. They told me the sound was coming from a door of one of the small quiet cells in a hallway not directly visible from the officer station, and about how a prisoner had died in that one. The prisoner allegedly died because the officers working there at the time had given them a sack of food when it was lunchtime for the prisoners, and the prisoner had choked on the food and died. I really didn't believe that the unit was haunted, so I decided to go look at this door. The sound volume increased as I got closer to the door. The door itself was visibly shaking, as if someone was pounding on it. There was nothing that could have been causing the door to shake like it was. I was at a loss for words. Later that night, I checked the door again, and there was a steamed-up handprint visible on the glass of the door's window. Another experience I had was at the same facility, but at a different housing unit. It was around 1 to 2 a.m., and I was sitting inside the officer station watching the cameras and talking to my partner. I looked at one of the cameras and clearly saw a prisoner sitting at a table in the day room. I turned my head and to look at the day room, and no one was sitting at the table I just saw on camera. I asked my partner to go check it out, because no one was supposed to be out of bed yet. I rolled back the time on the camera to see if I could see where the prisoner might have gone. The prisoner on the camera literally slowly faded away, and then vanished completely. My partner came back into the officer station, and we both watched the video over and over. Later on that same night, during one of my rounds, I noticed a wet floor sign that got left out. I returned it to the porter closet. I got back to the officer station and looked back to where the porter closet was, and I see the same wet floor sign is left out. I asked my partner if they were playing a joke on me or something, because I just put the sign away. My partner denies doing anything with it. I go back out and make sure I put the sign back in the closet and lock the door. I get back to the officer station. The wet floor sign is right there in the open again. My partner and I are both watching this wet floor sign now. It starts to tip over on one end very slowly, 2 of its legs off the ground. The sign then slams itself to the ground, then proceeded to slide quickly up the hallway and then back to in front of the closet door before ceasing all movement. My partner and I refused to come out of the officer station for the rest of the night, because we were scared out of our minds. One more notable one from Texas. I was working in an ad-seg unit, really high security unit for prisoners that get in fights and cause a lot of problems repeatedly. We had a prisoner who was sitting in one of our close observation cells. These cells are usually used for people who threaten harming themselves. In the summertime, prisoners will sometimes just say they are suicidal to be put in one of these cells because they are a lot cooler and are near the AC vents than the normal housing units. The prisoner told me that this was what they were doing and that they didn't want to cause any problems. Later on that night, one of my partners and I were watching cameras, and all of a sudden, we see a shadow moving across the floor. Eventually, it comes to the close observation cell and disappears under the door. This is where it gets a little crazy. I do a round and check on the close observation cell. The prisoner is pacing in the cell. I ask the prisoner if they are okay, and the prisoner tells me that something doesn't feel right, and that they are hearing voices that aren't there. I try to calm them down, and eventually they do, and lay on the bed. Later on, my partner calls for assistance because the prisoner had bit in the skin of their own wrists, causing them to bleed, held them above their head, and allegedly was speaking in tongues. When I started working at prisons in Michigan, I worked at a prison that's now closing. It was built back in 1877 and is one of the oldest prisons still operating in all the United States. There were so many small experiences that I've had there. Doors would slam, you'd hear voices. Cold chills. The first really notable experience I had was around Christmas time on the third shift. I was working the oldest unit on the facility, and usually we don't have prisoners there, but we had opened the unit to separate prisoners during the COVID pandemic. I didn't have a partner due to how short-staffed we were, so one of the other officers set up a TV for me to keep me entertained because I'd be really far away from all the other units, and I'd get bored with no one to talk to. I do rounds for most of the night watching TV in between them. I suddenly hear a banging sound from a door that leads to a hallway that takes you all the way to an even older, unused, condemned part of the prison. I open the door and take a look down the hallway. A cold breeze hits me, and suddenly my arm hairs stand on end. I close the door thoroughly, creeped out. I go and sit down and start watching TV again. The TV starts flipping through channels rapidly and then stops on static. I end up getting moved to a different unit because I'm scared, once again, out of my mind. One day on my third shift, my work friend and I were working positions that allowed us to have a lot of free time and no prisoners to watch. We decided to explore the prison. We explored the tunnels that went underneath the prison, the old barns, the old unstaffed gun towers. We eventually decided to go look at the old condemned part of the prison from my earlier experience. There was a big metal gate that was about halfway down the hallway that had to be opened by a big skeleton key. We get back to the old condemned part, and my friend tells me about how this part was supposed to be the old segregation. We had to use flashlights to see because this section is so old it's not powered. The energy back there I won't ever forget. Just being there filled me with a feeling of dread. I ask my friend to head back, and we start to head back down to where the hallway to the gate was. My friend's flashlight suddenly dies. We make it to the hallway, barely able to see anything in the almost pitch blackness. We hear something running after us, so we start running up the hallway too. My friend fumbles with the key as we hear it getting closer. We get the gate open and sprint out of there. Later on, I noticed that my friend had red claw marks all over his arms. Well, that's all I got for you all. Hope you enjoy reading about these. And that's the end of the story. That is from a correctional officer's experiences working in Texas and Michigan. Smo! Smo sends a wavy hand. Hello, Smo. We be reading spooky stories today. How are you doing? And, yeah, sorry, I'm trying not to interrupt the story proper, so in between stories I'll be looking at chat and reading and hanging out with y'all. Oh, Vermine! Hey, Vermine. Vermine says haunted prison stories are pretty rare, but always really good. That's honestly true. I love, like, especially stories from active prisons, right? Because a lot of times, like you know, correctional officers and people in similar positions, even if they do experience things, they don't usually share them, right? It's kind of like a hush-hush thing. You don't want to get people laughing at you. And so I really like... Oh, Vermine says hello. Hi, Vermine. How are you doing, by the way? Yeah, that's why I really like this subreddit. This is r/paranormal over on Reddit. And a lot of the stories are people sharing experiences. And it's really cool because there's a lot of people that might not otherwise be comfortable with sharing their experiences. And so you get a lot of really interesting stories from people that, I mean, I feel are fairly credible. Like in this, like, the stories that this officer was sharing were all, like, there was nothing like over the top, right? It was a lot of like really strange noises and like seeing like weird things on the camera. Like, it's all very, I don't know, it's all within like the wheelhouse of like typical like paranormal things. It's interesting. I love these kinds of stories, like where it's just like real people sharing things that they they believe happened to them. And so yeah, this is a really good one actually. I didn't This was a longer one, so I didn't this was one that I did not fully skim through before reading it with you all. So it's kind of our first time together. But I liked it. And yeah. So that's that one. Move on to the next story. And once again, I'll read the story all the way through. And then I'll come back to chat. Feel free to do as you like. So, alright, this next one is from user valpal1235 or 1237. The headline is, "For a decade, I was a paranormal tour guide at an infamous location." Alright. The Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum, formerly known as Weston State Hospital, is a Kirkbride building that housed the mentally ill from 1864 to 1994. In 2007, it was privately purchased and has become a museum, historic location, and ghost hunting spot. It has a most unpleasant and dark history that I've regaled to thousands of people, and it pains me to be an expert on the subject. In 2021, I retired from my position as a guide and ghost hunt event manager, under severe burnout. After all that I experienced there, it solidified in my mind that paranormal things that defy rational explanation do indeed happen, and certain phenomena are absolutely real, electronic voice phenomena especially. It's almost October, and I'm feeling a little spooky, so here are a couple of strange things I experienced in my time there. One evening, while training for the job, I was on the first floor with a couple coworkers, while everyone else was touring upstairs. We were just kinda killing time, quietly observing the area. Light from outside was coming in through the windows, casting on the inner hall's wall. In that light, I watched the perfect silhouette of a man from head to hip walk through that light from left to right. I said something about it, and the three of us watched as an arm and hand moved into the light from the right side. I immediately ran into the room and began looking out of that window for someone outside. There was no one there. At that time, the realization that from the ground to the bottom of the window is like 7 feet didn't even occur to me. I will never forget the crisp, clear silhouette shape for as long as I live. We would run experiments with a spirit box. It's a device that rapidly scans radio frequencies and are believed to be a communication device. Close parentheses. One person would use one with noise-canceling earbuds. All they're able to hear is the radio static and blips of a few random stations. When they hear a word or phrase, they are to say it out loud. I always liked this role in the experiment, parentheses. One evening, my coworker and I ran one of these experiments in a notorious room where a murder in 1987 took place. For 10 minutes, I sat and listened to nothing but radio static through the spirit box. No blips of radio, nothing except the static. I was starting to get bored when I heard a woman's voice say, "evil." So I spoke up and repeated the word, "evil." Next thing I know, my coworker is shining her flashlight in my face to get my attention. I pull out the earbud and she was practically frantic, saying, "It's time to go, time to go." So we hauled out of the room, down the hall, down the next hall to the center section before she could even tell me what happened. While I was hearing nothing but static, she said she kept hearing what sounded like someone shuffling their feet and walking around just outside of the door. She said she spoke up and asked whoever is out in the hallway, "Are they nice?" That was when I spoke out and said, "evil." In the wee hours one night, we figured it would be cool to see what would happen if we shut all the doors of the ward. One of the doors, as I was closing it, the knob twisted in my hand. I was not twisting the knobs, and was forcibly pulled closed. I stood there for several moments, opening, closing that door, trying to replicate what happened, trying to explain it. Finally, the person with me was like, "What the hell are you doing?" It was just so weird. I'd never felt invisible force like that before. Another time, we had 3 people spending the night, and they had thermal imaging video. They set it up, pointing down the hall where we could all watch on a tablet. We thought it'd be interesting to leave a device at the far end of the hall that would alarm if the field around it was disturbed. As one of the dudes walked down the hall to put it there, we could see his form on thermal imaging, clearly human-shaped in colors representing heat and warmth. When he walked by one of those doorways about a quarter the way down the ward, the shape of a head, neck, shoulders, and upper body of a person, in colors indicating cooler temperatures, peeked out as he walked by. Like someone popped out of the room for a second as he walked by to check him out. I've never seen anything like it. Won't forget it. And would give my left testicle, if I had one, for a copy of that footage. That happened a lot. A guest capturing something far out and not sending a copy to us. I'll end this long-winded Reddit post with something that absolutely changed me and that I still don't understand. I remember the exact night and time of these occurrences. That's how profound and somewhat unsettling they were. June 3rd and June 4th of 2017, 3:40 a.m. June 3rd. After an hour or so of hearing a female's voice, one instance even sounded like she said my name, as well as banging around, footsteps, literally running sounds on that hardwood floor toward us. I sat quietly on the floor with the group. I started to feel dizzy, lightheaded, and gross. I told myself it was my imagination and that I'd be fine. A few minutes later, I started to feel this intense burning sensation on my lower back, just to the right of my spine. Again, I told myself that it was all just my imagination. The burning sensation kept amping up, getting worse and worse. I told myself that I didn't want to be that guy and say anything in front of these people, you know? Finally, it got to the point where I had to say something. I asked my coworker with us if there was anything there. She was like, "OMG, there on my lower back to the right of my spine, was a mark. It looked like a burn or an abrasion, about 3 to 4 inches long and about 1 inch wide." Now, I'd seen other such claims made by visitors of scratch marks and the like, often writing them off. And the marks were always gone within an hour at most. I had visible marking on my back for almost a week. My nerves there, to this very day, often feel weird, sometimes chilled, sometimes like a skin soreness, especially when I think on the experience. June 4th. Same part of the building, same time of night, because I just can't get enough, right? I noticed that my voice recorder ran out of memory, so I'm holding it in my right hand, using the flashlight in my left, so I could see what I was doing. Suddenly, I feel a burning sensation on the underside of my right forearm. Did a WTF and shifted my flashlight to it. The person beside me and I watched as 3 welts began to appear down my arm. Needless to say, that blew my mind. It is one thing to see marks like that. It is a whole other thing to watch it as it happens on your own skin. Like the majority of instances I've heard about, those marks were gone within 10 to 15 minutes. No lasting effects. Scared would be the wrong word, but I have none to describe my mind frame around these events. I took a week off from work after to try and process it all and was nervous being in that hallway for the rest of that summer. Like I said, I still don't know what to think or believe. I've got enough stories of experiences to probably fill a book, but I'll leave you with those for now. I'll add a final note about how constantly poking around the dark and talking about past true horrors of human experience day in and day out truly takes its toll, spiritually and emotionally. Since my resignation, my mental health and overall level of happiness has greatly improved. I used to tell people for a while afterwards that it felt like I'd gotten out of a toxic relationship with that place. That's the end. That was from user ValPal1237 talking about her experiences at the Allegheny Lunatic Asylum as a tour guide. Smo says lurking mostly, by the way. That's fine, Smo. Feel free to chill. This is a sort of a chill, relaxing kind of stream time, I think. Yeah, this is a fun one, or like a fun story, like from this person just over the course of, it doesn't say exactly how long they worked there, but just all of these separate experiences they had at this one location, and all the different types of things they heard from like other people. Like, it's very, it's cool. Like it's like the accumulation of experiences like makes it much more believable. Ari says, Gray, you finally submitted to arson. You don't know that. That fire might have been there when I got here. Maybe I'm at a legally designated campground. Doesn't have to be. Don't worry about it, Ari. It's fine. Just enjoy the nice warm fire. Warm up your feet. Take a squat. Other expressions. But hi, Ari. How are you doing? We're sharing spooky stories today. I thought it'd be a fun change of pace. Get excited for Halloween, right? So we're sharing a whole bunch of stories that I found recently off of r/paranormal on Reddit, because Reddit is a source of much joy and happiness. And Ari says, "Ooh, spooky, with sinister cat faces." Ari says, "All your aliens are..." No, Ari, these are very human stories with very human people, very human persons, and sharing them with you. Ari says they're bound to scare us humans. You don't know nothing. Everything's fine. And I guess actually this is probably clear at this point for those who've been listening in, but the theme for tonight's show is like ghost stories. Like maybe another night, another stream we'll do some stories centered around like UFO encounters. Can do like some cryptid stories another time. I think it'd be fun to kind of like have themes like every time we do one of these, right? And I hope if people do enjoy the show, I would love to continue doing this like as a regular thing. Like maybe once a week or maybe every other week, you know, depending on what people like. Ari says, hell yeah. Yeah, I don't know, I love, you know, reading these spooky stories. This is something I do on my own free time. And so if I can find an excuse to do this with all of you as well, I think it'd be really fun. Like I spend a lot of time reading scary stories. It's probably why I have very bad insomnia, but that is neither here nor there. It's fine. Might also be the incredible amounts of Mountain Dew that I drink. Like all that caffeine probably is wrecking me too, but it's fine. Vermine says, sounds good to me. Yeah, I think it'd be fun. And I mean, we can also figure out, like, I'll probably be experimenting a little bit to see, like, what time would be best for everybody. Like, this was a time that was convenient for me, but I'm willing to change this to, like, a different time of the week if there's more people where that works better for them. It's all kind of still experimental right now. But, yeah, I don't know. so that was experiences from the Trans-Allegheny Lunatic Asylum. And that was some really interesting, spooky stuff. Lots of shadow figures, lots of strange noises, scratch marks. Scratch marks are always interesting. It's interesting hearing stories about supposedly ghosts or insert mystery creature like leaving like physical marks on people. Because you can get people take photos of those, right? And obviously, I mean, photos can be fake, but it's interesting that there's something like physical evidence with some of these stories. I think the person here, they have a link to a bunch of pictures of the supposed scratches they received during the one story towards the end. Yeah, I don't know, it's fun. Let's move on to the next story. Okay. Ooh, this will be a fun one. Okay. And once again, just so everybody knows, once I start reading the story, I'll be reading it all the way through, and then I'll go back to chatting with everybody like normal. But I just don't want to interrupt the story midway. No. Good horror requires careful pacing, right? So, alright, this story was posted by user Rook Skywalker in r/paranormal on Reddit. The header for the story is, "Do you believe in the Fae?" Right. I was on the fence about whether or not they existed, but I wasn't pompous to think that we are the only existence. We are spiritual, but are also skeptics all at once. Here's my personal experience. About 2 years ago, we had some odd occurrences at our home. It was around late September, early October. As the leaves were changing color, and you could really feel autumn in the air. If you live in the Midwest, or live in a place that has seasonal changes, the fall air smells different. We were decorating for Halloween, so things got moved around a bit in the front lawn to make room for the decor. We didn't think much of anything until things started to go missing at home. A few weeks prior to decorating, I purchased a set of Bluetooth earbuds that I use on a daily basis and carried in my pocket when I went out. After decorating, I went out to the local Target to pick up some groceries and some additional string lights. Later that evening, when I got a call, I looked for my earbuds and couldn't find them anywhere. I was a bit upset and chalked it up to maybe it fell out of my pocket at Target. The next day, I went back up to Target just to make sure, retraced my steps and checked lost and found. Nothing. Grieving for my loss, I bought another exact pair at Bezos, and 2 days later, the new package arrived at my doorstep, smiley tape and all. Bezos being Amazon. All is well again in our little world until a few days later when I was preparing our dinner. We wanted to do Korean barbecue at home, and we have a tabletop Korean barbecue grill pan, one that you set up on top of a butane stove. I looked in its usual spot, the corner kitchen cabinet. For the love of all things tasty, I hated the corner cabinet. It is where appliances and old pans are sent to live out their days in the dark, web-filled corners. Rarely thought of and visited until we just so happened to be in the neighborhood. The grill pan was not there. We took everything out of the corner cabinet, and it was just not there. I even had my wife lend a pair of eyes. She went as far as crawling into the Dominion armed with her cell phone flashlight to see if we can rescue the grill pan from the depths. But no luck. It was lost. Forever in the darkness. As my wife resurfaced from the corner cabinet, and as I wrapped up reminiscing old times with my Tamago pan and the old fondue set, dinner was a bust that night. 2 items missing back to back. Could it be a coincidence? My wife and I spoke. She mentioned that recently she saw a TikTok about Fae and how they can be mischievous. Of course, TikTok to the rescue. Being spiritual, this wouldn't be our first encounter with Fae, as my wife had made offerings to them in the past for our garden and etc. But this made me think and turn to our all-knowing acquaintance, Google. Come to find out, moving things in the garden and in the yard can disturb their habitat and the places that they reside. This can result in angering them. Understandable. I'd be pretty angry too if I came home from work and my house is moved a few blocks over. So, new knowledge in hand, I went out into our front lawn and apologized out loud and explained that we didn't mean to disturb them and that we were only preparing for the holidays. I left out an offering of honey, bread, and milk. Now I wait. The next night, I was upstairs wrapping up some work. My kiddo ran upstairs with my set of Bluetooth earbuds and handed them over while saying, "Here, Daddy." I said my thank yous and didn't think anything of it. When I set them down on my desk, I realized that my new pair of Bluetooth earbuds were already on my desk. I ran downstairs and asked my wife and kiddo where they found it. Oh, my kiddo responded, "Oh, they were just sitting right here on the coffee table." Eyes wide, I explained to my wife, "Those were my missing pair of earbuds that I lost a little over a week ago." We were both speechless. As we cleared off the coffee table looking for the earbuds the night it went missing. Later that night, while my wife took a bath and I was preparing dinner, I decided to visit my friend, the Tamago pan. I contort my way into the corner cabinet, phone in hand, to pull out the pan, and guess who was sitting there? The Korean grill pan that was missing only 24 hours earlier. We couldn't explain how both of the missing items showed back up, but I told my wife that I had apologized out loud the day before and took out an offering. Sometimes, just because we can't explain it, doesn't mean they do not exist. Thanks for reading and have a wonderful day. So this one was a little bit less scary, but it brings up an interesting topic of the Fae, or the little folk. Dagnabbit AC. AC says, going to Target alone is scary enough. Think of the potential Karens. Those are scary stories aplenty on Reddit. It's very true. I despise going to Target. It's always way too crowded. But, yeah, I get, dang it. AC says it's more creepy than scary. Yeah, it's interesting, right? Yeah, the Fae as a concept, like the idea of like fairies, little folk, etc., like whatever you might call them, is something that I am personally more skeptical of. But at the same time, I hear enough stories, especially of, so the situation within the story is actually there's a whole subgenre of paranormal stories that are like this, right? It's called Jot, just one of those things, and it's this idea of things going missing and then reappearing somewhere that, like, and then like reappearing like later after, despite all the looking you did, right? And I think this is something that I think everybody experiences to varying levels of maybe creepiness. Like, I don't know, I feel like people can definitely just be forgetful about where they put things. I mean, you know, the person in this story swears up and down that they thoroughly checked for the missing items in the areas where they are later found. And so, you know, it makes you wonder. And I can say, personally, this actually just happened to me the other day. And it's the weirdest thing. I still can't quite figure out how it happened. But I guess just to share my quick story, I bought like an electric toothbrush like a while back, and I forgot that I had bought it, and I came across it, and I was like, oh sweet, my electric toothbrush, I should start using this thing. And so I had set it, you know, I like set it down. How am I? Wait, my brain just stopped. Like, I'd set it down, and then I was like, oh, wait, how do I think I'm telling this wrong. Anyway, I can't remember the exact series of events, but basically I lost the electric toothbrush. Like, at some point, it just completely disappeared, and I couldn't find it. Like, I thought I found it at one point, and then it disappeared again. And then, I don't know, it was like 2 days ago, I was pulling some laundry. Like, I had some laundry on my bed that I was, like, folding up and putting away. And in the middle of that, like, pile of laundry, like, my electric toothbrush showed up. And I was like, a pile of laundry I had just pulled out of the dryer. And I was like, I don't remember putting a toothbrush in my pocket. And so it was just, like, a really weird thing. So, like, was that, like, mixed in with the clothes somehow? Like, I didn't notice? Was that, like, on my bed somehow? It was just a really weird thing. And I can't fully say that as paranormal or me just being forgetful about where I put things. But like weird stuff like that just, like, happens. And it's interesting to, like, I mean, like, the Fae is something that's always, like, blamed for it. For better or worse. Yeah, the Fae is an interesting topic that I'd love to maybe, like, do, like, a whole episode, like, talking about, like, Fae-related stories. Because it's definitely, like, a category that's, like, it feels, like, really out there, but at the same time there's, like, some interesting things with it. So, that is the Fae. Move on to the next story here. Oh, AC says, I read about this one Fae character in a manga. She's more in line with the traditional folklore legends and had a thick Scottish accent. Not often you see that in a Japanese setting. No, that's true, and actually, I mean, I guess if we want to move away from spooky talk for just a second, and AC, since you seem to like manga, you might be interested in this one. There's a really good manga that I like. It's called A Very Fairy Apartment. And I like it because it's basically about this Japanese college student who studies folklore from around the world and is constantly encountering, like, folklore creatures. And so it's got a lot of, like, fairies and other, like, kind of, like, more Western traditional creatures, as opposed to, like, Japanese, like, folkloric creatures. And so it's different. It's very different from, like, your usual, like, manga, right? Because most manga is very, you know, Japan culture based, which, you know, fair enough, it's from Japan. Yeah, a very fairy apartment. It's a really interesting one. It's quite funny too. Yeah, all the characters are based off of, like, Western folkloric creatures. So that's one worth checking out if people want something as a palate cleanser after all of these super scary stories. Okay. Now this next one could also be some fun to discuss afterwards. Yeah, so let's go ahead and jump right into the next story then. So this is on r/paranormal on Reddit, posted by user Meme Junkyard. The headline of the story is, "Don't take items from dead bodies." I am a skeptic of the paranormal. I always have been, and I always will be. However, this is a story from my childhood that I remembered and need to tell. As a kid, I used to be obsessed with World War II. I would collect items and made it a passion of mine. One day, I had some money and visited a local surplus store. I saw an authentic US M1 helmet on the shelf that I hadn't seen before, covered in dirt. Even damaged, these can often go for a lot of money. I asked the owner how much it was, and he reluctantly said $20, which surprised me. When I asked why this was, he pulled it down off the shelf to reveal brown, crusted material inside, and a bullet hole through the temple area of the helmet, with no exit hole. He explained it had been dug up by a metal detector in the Ardennes. Being a stupid child, I bought it. I had no thoughts or fears about it, and just thought it was cool. After a week of having it in my possession, I began to have horrific nightmares, mainly involving visions of death. My parents would report constant yelling in my sleep. Having no prior mental health issues or genetic predisposition, I was brought to a therapist. No conclusion was reached, and the nightmares continued every day until, 2 months later, I decided to sell the helmet to afford a new backpack. The nightmares stopped the day it left my possession. Not once during this time did I assume the helmet had anything to do with it, until years later, accidentally stumbling across accounts from veterans describing cursed war trophies and battlefield items affecting their lives. Please, do not take items from dead bodies. That's kind of the end of the story. It's kind of like a short one, right? Ari says, "Is free, why not?" Ari, that's not the lesson to be learned. You fool. You arrogant fool. And Nai-chan says hello. Hi, Nai-chan. And Ari sends his hearts. Ari says his free stuff. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, the argument can be made that the person isn't using it anymore, I guess. AC says don't take it unless you're allowed to. And Nai-chan says hi. Hi, Nai-chan, how are you doing? I guess, how is everyone doing actually so far? How are the stories for y'all? Yeah, I think, like, I like this story. Like, this story is kind of short and sweet, but it does bring up that idea of haunted objects, right? Which, that's a huge category in the paranormal. That could be, like, we could have many streams dedicated just to haunted object stories. Oh man, we definitely got to do a stream talking about, like, Robert the Doll sometime. Like, that's a famous haunted object. Nai-chan says, I like the little ASMR campfire on the background. Thanks, Nai-chan. Yeah, I thought it'd be kind of like a nice... Like, we're kind of going for, like, a comfy, spooky vibe tonight. You know, we're telling some nice, scary stories. We got, like, a nice, warm campfire to huddle up with. I'm trying really hard to kind of emulate, something that I used to do a lot when I was a kid. Like, because my family would go camping all the time. And so something I fondly remember from the camping trips was, like, everybody, like, huddled up around the campfire telling spooky stories and, like, other fun stories. I'm trying to kind of recreate that feeling just a little bit, you know, as much as we can in this digital age. But, you know, I hope everyone's liking it. AC says don't take it unless you're allowed to, or have someone who can dispel cursed items. AC, you're right. AC, you're right. You got this, what is it? Dispel, curse, or whatever. D&D style. That'll get you good. Yeah, so, like, cursed objects are really fun. And actually, I was, like, something else I really love about finding these stories on Reddit is that very often one story will spur on a lot of other stories from people. And so the comments underneath this story, there's actually a couple other kind of fun stories I thought it'd be fun to share along with it. So this is another story. This was just a comment on this story from the Don't Take Items from Dead Bodies story. So this is a secondary comment. It's a nice little story as well. And AC says, I love reading those scary stories to tell in the dark books. Perfect for campfires. Oh, scary stories to tell in the dark? That stuff was legitimately traumatizing when I was a kid. Like, some of those stories are really upsetting. But they're really good. Like, those are good, scary stories. They're classics. Right, here's a quick comment I wanna share from the story I just read. It's like a secondary story. From Zizigi Arcana. Says, I believe you. While taking a hike through a national park near where I live, I found what looked like the bottom half of a stone arrowhead. Neat, I thought, and I took it home. Shortly after, I started having increasingly violent and stressful dreams. I became angry much more easily and had violent, intrusive thoughts, which was way out of character for me. I also started having strong feelings of being watched when I was at home. The presence felt oppressive. Could have been stress, it could have been something else. But I thought back to the stone arrowhead. You always hear about Native American curses and whatnot, and it really made me wonder if I was being targeted by some kind of angry spirit tied to the object. So, sitting at my computer desk, I said out loud, all right, This weekend I'm going to take the arrowhead back to park name, in parentheses. And I immediately felt a wave of relief wash over me, like someone had been pushing down on my shoulders and suddenly stopped. After that moment, I no longer had angry thoughts and no longer felt like I was being watched. So, true to my word, that weekend, me and my girlfriend took a trip back to that park and I put the arrowhead back where I found it. I covered it with some dead branches for good measure, apologized, and continued walking the trail. On our way back to our car, I found a $10 bill on the ground. I like to think that whatever was attached to the arrowhead left that there for me as a thank you for bringing back the arrowhead. I guess a ghost paid for lunch that day. Like I said earlier, it could have just been stress getting to me. It was a fairly stressful time in my life. The arrowhead could have even just been a rock, or a contemporary item. But going forward, if I find something that looks like it might vaguely be a Native American artifact, I ain't touching that. So, yeah, there you go. More cursed objects, like... AC says, "Who has my big toe?" Pause for dramatic effect. You do. I love that story. That story actually really, like, that was one of the stories that really scared me as a kid. I guess I was mostly scared by the idea that, like, somebody was, like, out there, like happily eating other people's toes. Like, such a weird, such a strange thing for, like, be, like, the subject of a story, but... AC says, "You know what Kratos says about ghosts? He says they don't have needs, only wants." Oh. That's kind of an interesting perspective. I mean, it's sort of true, right? I mean, I guess depending on, like, the definition of ghost we're talking about, right? The idea that, like, ghosts always have, like, or, like, some ghosts have, like, unfinished business, or, like, things they want done before they are willing to move on. See, I mean, I guess once you're dead, you don't really have any needs in the usual sense, right? I mean, I don't know. I guess I haven't been dead for a while, so can't say how it works over on that side of things, or if it works at all, because again, nobody knows what's going on there. AC says they're dead and they have unfinished business or regrets. Yeah, I mean, and that's kind of like it's a very popular idea, and there definitely seems to be, you know, a lot of stories that kind of lean that direction of, like, like spirits coming back, or, like, coming into contact with living people specifically because they have regrets, or they have anger, or they have some kind of strong emotional connection, keeping them, like, tied to an area or to an object or to a person. There's all kinds of, you know, very interesting things within that, I don't know, that category, I guess. And it's wait, okay. Yeah, it's interesting to think about, right? Alright, so I think we're gonna go ahead and move on to the next spooky story here. So this was posted in r/paranormal on Reddit, posted by user 6081 miles. The title of this, or I guess the headline of the story: "I saw someone that I wasn't supposed to see." I was once working as a receptionist at a 5-star resort that's about 45 minutes away from the city center. Everyone who has worked in tourism and or hospitality knows that there are certain periods during the year where it's busier than usual, i.e. the peak season. This incident happened during peak season for us. The resort was overbooked and guests were checking into the rooms one after another at the reception counter. I was almost done checking in this nice, lovely couple when I saw this family of 5 standing behind them, and tried to finish up the whole check-in process so I could assist the family that was next in line. You must be thinking that when I said family of 5, it's the parents and 3 kids, right? But it was actually 2 kids and 1 elderly woman, who at that time I assumed was either the husband's or wife's mother. Now, the resort's policy was to get the details of every guest that were staying in the resort, and it is for a good reason. Safety. It's the same reason that all airlines are doing what they do when they obtain their passengers' info. So I told the husband that we needed everyone's details, and he just said, sure, no problem. And of course, I was expecting 5 names on the registration. By the time I realized there were only 4 names, the family was already at the concierge area to pick up their luggage, and then left to go to the rooms. I couldn't go after them as I was assisting another guest. Like I said, it was peak season, so all I could do was watch them from afar walking towards the elevators, then disappeared from sight. The whole time they were walking, the old woman just followed them from behind quietly, but I didn't give much thought to it and went right back to assisting the guest that was in front of me. After the buzz had died down at around 4 p.m., I decided to ring the family's room to inform them that they were missing details. The husband came down to the reception room and I told him I needed the info of his or his wife's mother's info. This man just stood there, stared at me for what felt like a minute, and said, "It's only my wife, and I, and our 2 kids." Now, me being confused obviously said, "Oh no, dying. Oh, it's fine. I've returned to life. I apologize." But me, being confused, obviously said, "But sir, I saw there were 5 of you." At this point, I thought he was lying to avoid paying for a third-person charge for one of the rooms. They got 2 rooms, and 1 room has only enough amenities for 2 persons. Same goes for the buffet breakfast that's included. He took another minute and asked me what did this elderly woman look like. To which I explained that she had gray hair and it was short like a bob haircut. I also told him that she was wearing this red, Cheongsam shirt. Right as I told him that, he quickly took out his phone, frantically scrolled for a few seconds, and showed me a picture of the same woman in the same clothes lying in a closed coffin that had a clear glass cover so you could still look inside. I just nodded slightly, and he said that was his mother. She died unexpectedly a few months ago. I was, to no surprise, too shocked to say anything at this point, but somehow managed to mutter the words, "I'm so sorry for your loss, and I am so sorry about this." He just said it was okay, gave me a small smile, and left without saying anything. When they checked out 2 days later, we just pretended like the whole thing never happened. Luckily enough, the elderly woman was not there. I still get goosebumps thinking about it to this day. There you go. It's the end of the story. AC says, "Seeing someone you weren't supposed to?" That's what she said. Alright, says the story's killing you, Gray. Sad face. I was definitely getting punched by a ghost for a second there. Jeez. Hold on. I don't know what happened. Yeah, there we go. Another classic setup of seeing an extra person where there shouldn't be an extra person. Because ghosts are super sneaky like that. They like to break the rules. They don't want to have to pay for an extra room, so they're just going to sneak on in behind people. And be like, "Oh, I'm just a ghost, sir. You can't make me pay for things." Darn ghosts not paying their taxes. Anyway. Yeah, that's like a nice, simple, spooky story, right? I like it. It's just... it's like one singular experience. And it's just very believable that something like this could have happened. AC says, "That story reminded me of Sixth Sense when the boy's grandmother was still around. Him seeing dead people all the time and all." Oh yeah, man, I haven't seen the Sixth Sense in such a long time. Yeah, it's kind of that same idea, like... I mean, and again, going into, like, you know, like, what are ghosts and what do ghosts do? But there's definitely this idea that ghosts will stick around their loved ones, right? Like, even after death, they will hang around in some capacity. Either as, like, a protector, or maybe just as a way to, like, spend time, like, more time with that person they love. And, like, this is, like, it's a little spooky. But it's also kind of heartwarming, this idea that, like, you know, this this man's mother was, like, still with him in the way that she could be with him. Maybe, right? AC says haunting taxes don't exist, though taxes are capable of haunting you. It's so true. Every time tax season rolls around, I'm like, oh no. I can feel this other presence in my life weighing me down. What could it be? But yeah, so it's just a nice little spooky story. Let's see here. Okay, here, this is what we call, and this is what we call a good one. This is one I really wanted to share because this will really spark off some fun stuff to talk about. So here's the next story, posted on r/paranormal, posted by user QueenBearEXP. The headline of the story: something mimicked my daughter, clear as day. Hi, here's a quick instant that happened just a few moments ago, and it's got me freaked out. It's a quiet Sunday afternoon, and I'm slowly cleaning the kitchen. It's surprisingly quiet outside, as typically when it's nice out. The neighborhood kids are running around and being rambunctious as they usually do. I'm enjoying the quiet and finishing up loading the dishwasher, and I decide to go outside for a smoke. I'm putting my flip-flops on and head for the front door. I open the door and hear a very, very distinct, Ma? When my daughter's looking for me around the house, she'll say, Ma? With a distinct tone of voice and inflection that I'd recognize anywhere. It came from the back door that leads into the yard. It spooked me because I know she's away at her father's house until after dinner today. She called me about 10 seconds after I heard it, though. Proper spooked. Thanks for reading. And there you go. That is like a super short story. But this is something that is a big no for me, boss. This idea of like a doppelganger, right? Like something imitating either the look or the sound of somebody you know, but you knowing for a darn fact that that person is nowhere nearby. Like this is probably like in my top 5 like I don't know, nopes of life. Like this kind of thing happens. That's like I would like to be done living for today. Like this is a no thank you. AC says, I feel like Ghostbusters can explain it better in detail for specific instances. Does Ghostbusters explain doppelgangers? Maybe they do. If you're making a specific callback, I can't remember the moment you're talking about. But yeah. Like... And this is another really fun one because... Like, this was a really short story, but it sparked a lot of conversation in the comments of other people sharing their own instances of spooky things. So I just want to... So here's a couple that I just want to try reading out with you, see what you think of. Let's see here. I'm just going to do a quick skim to make sure I find the right one I want to read. Well, maybe. Okay. AC says they have a big book of paranormal phenomena. AC says. And Vermeen says, I'm sure this has happened to everyone at least once, which makes it creepier. Oh yeah, I think... So here's another short one I'll read real quick, just as an example. But Patachilis says, kinda something like this happened to my son years ago. I was at the store, my son was home playing with his friends. I think they were about 12 or 13 years old then. They distinctly heard me call them from down in the basement to come here, and as they just started to open the basement door and head down the basement, I opened the front door and came home from the store. They swore it was my voice that called them. Yeah. Yeah, so there's lots, and actually, I guess, so I actually do have an experience with this as well. I'll share this real quick. This is, I guess, this was something that happened to me multiple times back when I was about 6 or 7. Back when I was like, as a little kid living in this, this is like, childhood home, I guess. And this this happened like maybe half a dozen times, just kind of sporadically. But there would be these occasions where I would be like, downstairs in the living room, or not downstairs, I'd be like on the main floor of the house, like watching like cartoons or like playing with my toys or something, and I would hear a voice from upstairs calling my name. I would just hear like, Gray? And I would, I'd kind of perk my ears up and I'd run upstairs and it'd be like, I'd be like looking around, I'd be like, checking all the bedrooms upstairs, nobody's there. I go back downstairs and I see that like, my parents are like out on the back porch, they're talking or laughing about something or other. They always spend like a ton of time in the backyard. We had like a jacuzzi back there that they were always in, and I wasn't allowed to use it because I was a kid, and I was grumpy about that. But the point being, like, I would hear like something call for me, like, and it was always like it would come from upstairs, and I can remember this happening distinctly like several times, and every time it happened, like, I would always like run up there because I was a stupid kid. My idea was like, if I get there fast enough, I'll catch who's doing it. It didn't process in my brain as like this is a scary thing happening. Like this is like somebody screwing with me and I'm gonna be faster than them. Like, but, and it's like looking back on it, I can't believe I wasn't sucked into the void by a scary ghost monster for answering the call. Like, jeez, but yeah, like nowadays, it's a big no. Like anything like that where you just like hear a voice calling to you from somewhere else, like, no thank you. That is not okay. Alright, so guess we'll move on to we got one more lengthy story. Well, not super lengthy. We got one more story here, and this is actually from, this is an interesting one. So this one comes from r/scary stories. And I will preface this one with a slight asterisk, as scary stories on Reddit is usually where people will post like short story fiction, like horror fiction. But it kind of seems like this guy maybe posted he posted like an actual experience here. Maybe. I mean, again, this is a site, this is a Reddit meant for fiction, but the guy is posting it saying it's his true story, so I mean, take that where you will. Oh, wait, before we get started, AC says, all this spooky talk reminds me. Do you guys remember the Mummy movie Under Wraps on Disney Channel? They're making a sequel? I feel like I vaguely remember that movie. Wasn't that like an old, like, wasn't that like an early 2000s one? Or am I thinking of something different? It's like, I got like there's like a slight buzz in the back of my head. It's like, I think I remember that. They're making a sequel? That's a strange and interesting thing to be doing. AC says, yes, it's old. That's really weird. I mean, I guess, like, with Disney Plus, they're doing, like, all kinds of stuff. Like, they're bringing back all kinds of random things I haven't thought about in years, so... Oh, that's weird. It's kind of cool, I guess. I'll probably watch it. Like, I don't know. But yeah, so... AC says the mummy's named Harold. Of course it is. Actually, oh, that... Oh, man, that, like, tickled something... my brain. I feel like I probably have seen that, but I was probably such a little kid when it came out. And then Vermine says, still waiting on that Gargoyles reboot. Oh, man, Gargoyles was the best. I loved Gargoyles. That show is so good. I haven't watched that in years. There's gotta be somewhere you can watch Gargoyles, right? I would love to watch that again. I don't even know if it's, like, as good as I remember it. That'd be such a fun watch. My goodness. But okay. Let's get back to the story real quick. So this is posted in r/scary stories. This is a fiction subreddit, but supposedly this guy labeled it as a true story, so again, it is what it is. This is posted by U Timberwolf 20023. The headline is, "It's been a while, but let me spook you with a true story." So here it is. Hello everyone, it's been a long time, but I'm back and with a few new experiences. Now let's lay down, relax, and get lost in another story. This story here is another camping story, so get comfortable, it's going to be a long one. It starts with me and my dad and his partner at the time going on a camping trip to a forest called Icicle. It's a very beautiful place full of places to explore and animals to boot. I even got to pet a wild doe. She was friendly. So as we got to the campsite, I go out to stretch a bit and set up camp. I wasn't sleeping in a hammock this time. I had a small tent. After setting up, I went to a nearby river to see if I could catch some fish. But as I was fishing, I felt like something was watching me. I shrugged it off at first and said it was probably an animal like a bear or wolf probably nearby. I don't know why that calming. As I continued to fish, but that feeling wouldn't go away. It didn't feel like an animal, and now I couldn't ignore it. I looked around trying to see if I could catch something, but all I saw was something tallish going back into the trees. A little uneasy now, I took what I caught and went back to the camp. I told my dad what happened and said it could have been a bear on its hind legs. So I went with that, but I knew that I was dealing with something or someone else. Its gaze had purpose, and it only retreated when I noticed its presence. It was intelligent. We cooked up the fish I caught and talked a bit before we all went to bed. Or they did at least. I couldn't. Later on that night, I was reading and sorting my supplies when I heard a scratching noise, like running a nail down a tent. I was wondering if it was my dad trying to get into my tent to tell me something. But as soon as I showed my flashlight towards that noise, it stopped, and I heard a growl, then it ran away. The growl didn't sound right to me, though. It sounded wrong. As it ran away, it screeched, and it sounded almost human. But not quite that either. The next day, I decided to go on a hike to try to forget what I experienced the night before. As I was on the trail, everything got a bit fuzzy, and the next thing I know, I was off the trail, halfway up a small mountain. As I was trying to figure out where I was, something threw a rock at me. So I turned around and saw nothing, but felt that feeling again. So I sprinted down trying to get away from the thing that obviously lured me there. I managed to find the trail I was on, which wasn't that far away from the base of the mountain, and went back to camp. I told my dad and we booked it out of there the next day. That night I kept the fire lit and didn't sleep. And yes, this was when a doe probably from a feed station nearby walked up. I fed it a bit and pet it, and she was a sweet creature, and I could tell she sensed something wrong as well. All that night, that thing was stalking me, waiting for the fire to die, but I didn't let it. Luckily, I made it through, and right around 5 or 6 a.m. I left, and around 8 the dough went as well. Me and everyone booked it and never looked back. So, there you go. Thanks for my experience, and hope it gave you a spook. That was a little bit less well written than I had suspected it would be. That's, I mean, it's interesting, because, again, it's like, I mean, it doesn't feel super over the top. It almost sounds a bit like it might have been like a Bigfoot encounter. Well, with the seeing the tallish figure in the woods and having rocks thrown at her. Like, having, like Bigfoot loves throwing rocks at people. Assuming that Bigfoot loves doing anything and is a real thing. But so that's kind of like an interesting little story of just like experiencing like something at night, and the person may have, like, I feel like the person experienced something real and then maybe added on a couple of like imaginary details a little bit, or exaggerated details. But it's an interesting little, you know, maybe encounter with some kind of a Bigfoot or some other kind of wolf, or like, not wolf, like a forest creature of some kind. Again, gotta have that nice forest story, right? Because we're in the woods here with our campfire. Yeah, there's not much more to say to that one. That was pretty short, but go. Okay. I think, well, let me, oops. Hold on, wait. Ooh, hey, okay. Alright, this will be the last big story of the stream. And then we'll have one more bonus story, and then we'll call it there. Kind of aiming for like a 2-ish hours length thing here. So, alright, this is we're back to r/paranormal for this last one. This was posted by user Rage Eat P Nut. Okay, these usernames are weird sometimes. The headline of the story is, I work security on the graveyard shift in a hospital. These are a few events that I can't explain. So that's the title. Right. So I've worked as a security officer for going on 4 years now in this hospital. It's a very old hospital, and only the ER is open 24/7. The rest of the hospital closes at 1900. I've had several things happen that I simply cannot explain, but since I'm a skeptic, I always try to rationalize things. I have caught several EVPs as well and have the video, but don't want to self-promote, so let me know if I can safely post it. That's a Reddit thing. These are my true experiences and not fabricated. These are in no specific order. First experience was coming out of my office when I spotted someone in all black at the very end of the hall. It was far enough away that I couldn't make out details. Just a black, human-shaped thing. I laid eyes on it for just a second or two when it darted into a doorway. Like, really fast. I ran towards it and the doorway was empty and the door was locked. The only way in was with a key, and I was the only one in that part of the hospital that night. I, of course, went into the office, but no one was inside. Next experience. One night, at around 0200, I was sitting at my desk in the security office. The office has a closet located within arm's reach of where I'm seated. Out of nowhere, there was 2 very loud and very distinct bangs on the closet door that sounded like it came from the other side. It was so distinct that I actually remember the noise coming from the upper right-hand part of the door. It nearly gave me a heart attack, and after I fell out of my chair, I opened the closet door and found nothing inside that could have fallen or hit the door. Just some old office supplies on a shelf. Still perplexed by this one the most. Next experience. I was getting off the elevator on the 3rd floor of the hospital when I heard some faint noise coming down one of the hallways. I followed the noise and it got louder. Turns out, in the last room down this hallway, the TV was on and set to max volume. This is an empty floor that is not being used during the day or night, so no one should be up here at any period of time. I turned down the volume on the TV, then switched it off. 2 hours later, when doing a round, the TV was on again and set back to max volume. I repeated the routine and left. On my last round at 0400, I found the TV on and maxed out again. This time, I just unplugged it. Next experience. During my night shifts, when making rounds, I will routinely get the feeling as if I'm being followed or watched. After looking into EVPs on YouTube, I decided to start recording during my rounds when an anxious feeling hit me. I have caught both male and female voices on these videos. I can post a link or DM you if you want. I'm not a YouTuber or anything, so I don't care about the views. Next experience. We have a small chapel in the hospital on the main floor. It's located in a hallway that can't be accessed by anyone after hours. I've seen this door open a few inches by itself once. It was latched, and I don't think the AC or draft could twist the handle and unlatch the door. Another time between rounds, it was standing wide open, when on the previous round it was latched shut. No idea. Next experience. This hospital had an older, separate building located behind it that was once used as an end-of-life hospice throughout the early 1900s. It was shut down and later used as an office area for around 10 years before being demolished altogether just 2 years ago. It was 2 floors and did have an elevator. After it was demolished, for about 3 months afterwards, our security phone was getting several calls a week from the no longer existing elevator emergency phone. It's the button you would press if the elevator got stuck. It was always quiet on the other end, but no idea why it was ringing with that number. Final experience. Alone on a quiet floor, and I will sometimes hear random things fall down in random rooms or hear doors shut that I could not locate. Heard a woman or child maybe crying once very softly for a minute or so, but could not locate anyone. Again, no one should have been on that floor. I am not saying these are proof of anything paranormal. These are just an assortment of things that have happened to me that I can't explain with easy logic. I am a skeptic, but after working here, I do keep my mind a bit more open. I will answer questions if anyone has any. That's the end. So, yeah, there you go. That's a spooky one. And hospitals for me, like haunted hospitals are no good. As no bueno. But it's a really interesting collection of experiences. Especially considering a lot of these experiences happened on that 3rd floor. Where there was nobody else located. Or like in relation to like that abandoned building that was later demolished. Like that's... No thanks. Like this is the kind of stuff that I would not want to mess around with, personally. Like, I've always I really want to go on, like, a paranormal investigation. But I'd absolutely be doing that with other people. Because, fuck that, like, being alone somewhere in some, like, significantly sized space and just, like, hearing stuff going on around you. That is a no thank you. Oof. Alrighty. So, that is the end of all of our true scary stories. So we've got some nice spooky ones, I think, tonight, which was fun. I do want to do a bit of a, call it a palate cleanser kind of story. This is still, I mean, you know, ostensibly a scary story. But this one is like, this is an absolutely, like, this is just like an old ghost story that gets like shared around. This is one I really like. And so I thought it might be fun to end the stream with just like a fun, kind of classic ghost story. And this This ghost story supposedly hails from Texas, which gives me permission to read the whole thing in a really bad southern drawl. Nice Texan drawl, I guess. And no one can stop me because this is my stream and I can do what I want. Yeah, this will be the final story of our spooky stream today. This story is called Sifty Sifty Sand. Alright. There was once a beautiful old house right on the edge of a lake, surrounded by woods. But no one would live there because a spirit calling itself Sifty Sifty Sand drove everyone away. Now, in desperation, the owner of the house went to the big city, looking for a man or woman who would be able to banish the spirit of Sifty Sifty Sand. The first night in town, he came across a man named Sam, who had spent much of his life banishing ghosts. Now, as Sam approached the house, he whistled cheerfully to himself. The prospect of a good night's sleep in a fancy house and a big wad of money in his pocket made Sam a happy man. Now, darkness came swiftly, and with it came a sinister hissing sound from the forest. Sifty, Sifty. The wind whistled in the treetops. The waves lapping the shores responded. Outside, a huge gust of wind shook the house and howled down the chimney. Sam shivered and threw another log on the fire. The wind settled down a bit, and Sam could once again hear the tiny sounds of night. Sifty, Sifty, the little frogs croaked. Sam belched the biggest of the bullfrogs. The sound of the waves grew louder. Sam heard a huge thud, thud, thud sound coming from the forest. Sam ran around the house, making sure all the windows and doors were locked. He had just settled down by the fire for supper, when there came a soft cry from the far side of the lake. The frying pan shook in his grip, and he hastily put it back on the fire and pulled a Bible out of his pack. The cry came again, louder. A strange gust of air blew through the house, bringing with it a strange musty smell, like the dust in a graveyard. Out on the lake, Sam heard a soft voice chanting, I am Sifty Sifty Sand. I'm here on the lake, but where is the man? Sam froze in place, and the wind picked up again, howling down the large chimney. I am Sifty Sifty Sand, a sinister voice hissed from the shore of the lake. I'm here on the shore, but where is the man? Sam dropped his Bible in his fright. His hands were shaking too much to grip anything, and the dusty, decaying smell coming through the window seemed to dull his thoughts and numb his body. I am Sifty Sifty Sand. A terrible howling voice came from the front of the house. I'm here on the porch, but where is the man? Abandoning food, Bible, bag, and sanity, Sam wrestled desperately with the back window, trying to open it wide enough to climb through. He heard the front doors slam open with a bang, and down the passageway came the thud, thud, thudding of footsteps. Then the kitchen door slammed inward, and a huge shadow with burning yellow eyes appeared in the frame. I am Sifty Sifty Sand, a horrible blood-chilling voice bellowed. I'm here in the house with the trespassing man. No, you ain't, on account of I'm gone, shouted Sam, springing through the window, glass, wood frame, and all. He hightailed it back to town faster than a jackrabbit. And that was the last time anybody went near the old house on the lake. If it hasn't fallen to pieces by now, then sifty, sifty sand may be there still. The end. AC says, I'm wearing earbuds so I can hear you whispering that into my ear. When did this turn to ASMR? You gotta whisper the ghosty sounds, though. That's all part of the fun. Like, I don't know. I feel like, I don't know. Good old ghost stories gotta have fun theatrics, right? Like, I don't know how good I am at it, but I don't know. I love Sifty Sifty Sand. It's just a very silly story. And Vermine says not a bad Western twang. Yeah, I mean, I gotta practice, I'm sure, but I lived in rural Colorado, so I got a little bit of that country in the back of my throat if I can bring it out. Used to live there for like 10 years, so yeah, it's a fun little short scary story. I mean, you know, scary quote unquote story. It's like a little classic campfire story that's always fun to tell. The tale of Sifty Sifty Sand. Oh, Alex. Thank you for the subscription on YouTube. Very nice of you. Welcome and howdy. But yeah, so I think that's actually going to be the end of our scary stories for today. And I'm really curious to hear what everybody thinks about a series of streams like this. Maybe like once a week or so. Just telling like different scary stories, like, you know, like maybe like having like different themes every time. Like, this is the kind of stuff I love doing. Like, I love reading this kind of stuff. And if other people are into it too, then I would be 100% down to do more of this. It's like, it would be, I think it'd be tons of fun. And it'd be kind of a similar thing, like, you know, every stream would have like a theme, and then we'd always end it with like a nice fun palate cleanser story. Or like if there's like other suggestions people have for topics, we could always do that as well. Vermine says, would you consider reading 4chan green text stories as well? I'm not familiar with the 4chan green text stories. But maybe I could look into that. And AC says, scary stories maybe not, but I would be down for stories of another type. Okay. Yeah, I mean, we could definitely look into getting some variety of things. Like, obviously for spooky season, we'll probably do a lot more scary stuff. Well, you know, scary quote unquote. But like, we could definitely like start looking into like more, maybe like general fiction or like legends, folk tales. Like, there's all kinds of fun stuff that'd be fun to talk about. So yeah, maybe we'll, maybe like I'll kind of post about it like on the Discord server. Or like maybe like on Twitter as well or something, like kind of get some ideas from people, some suggestions, things people would be interested in. But yeah, thanks everybody for joining in. This was lots of fun. I mean, I had fun anyway. And maybe you all were just tolerating me. But either way, I appreciate everyone who came by to hang out. Like, this is like a fun experiment for me, because I haven't done a stream quite like this before. And so, I don't know, it's fun to try new things. Like, it's really fun to play the video games, obviously. Like, I do love playing Final Fantasy XIV, I love playing Warframe, love the other games I've been playing lately. But, you know, I like spooky stuff. And I think I was talking with, I don't know if Smo's in chat right now, but I was talking with Smo about possibly doing some scary games for the Halloween month. We might look into start doing. But yeah, so thanks for hanging out with me. Vermine says, it was a fun stream. Good night, guys. Vermine, thanks for stopping by. It was fun to see you. Hope you have a good night. AC says 14 has side stories you can read if you want to consider it. That's true. There's a lot of stuff with 14. So maybe looking into some of that stuff could be fun. Like, if there's like lengthy like lore that we could like read together, that could be a pretty fun thing to do. But yeah, so just things to think about and consider. And thanks so much for everybody coming to hang out. So this will be the end of the stream for now. I'll be back playing Final Fantasy XIV in about, what time is it? In about 2 hours. I'll be live again with some Final Fantasy XIV for those interested in that. So yeah, everybody, I hope you have a good night. Enjoy yourself. Stay spooky, I guess. Oops. How do I? Uh-oh. Hey. Okay. Yeah. Thanks everybody for stopping by. Have a good one. We'll see ya another time.